has been promised to this other gallery, whether it had been or not was irrelevant. And I had the piece in my possession, and I told them, I said, you're going to have to call the gallery. And then what happened is they called they gave me their name and their phone number, and I called the gallery, and I said, this person called, and they're interested in this piece. I'm going to ship you this piece tomorrow, and then you take care of it. But what that does is that reassures the gallery that I'm not going to steal their commission by selling privately. Anything I can do to reinforce that bond of trust, I do, and it comes back tenfold, 100-fold, because they buy advertising because they trust you won't cheat them.
What about commission stuff? If somebody buys a piece of yours at a gallery and also says to the gallery that they would like to contact you privately for a separate commission, a specific piece that they just...
Oh, everything has to be done through the gallery. If they're interested in a commission, they can tell the gallery what they want. They can send the gallery, sometimes they send, I don't do portraits of people's dogs, but I sometimes do things that are similar type of things, and they send photos to the gallery, and sometimes they send them to my house. Gallery's not worried because they know I will not cut them out of the loop, right? And it amounts to a substantial, in terms of the gallery's investment in your career, it amounts to a substantial amount of money.
Could you talk a little bit about pricing in relationship to your work so that can serve as an example for others?
Let's see now, you're talking about in terms of...
How much wholesale versus retail?
Okay.
Some of the kinds of things you're talking about you don't go over 3 feet, try not to...
Oh, okay.
Because of this reason.
Okay, yeah, let me go into this for a little bit. There's some myths we have about, and some dreams we have about being superstars and, you know, showing at Mary Boone and being in New York and so forth. Well, I think there's a problem with being a superstar, because what happens is those people who reach superstardom sometimes only remain as superstars as a very short period of time. And if you go through Art in America magazines from 10 years ago, I will bet you anything that 99% of the artists whose work is represented in there, you have never been heard of since. All right, so what happens is that they may sell their work for huge amounts of money for a short period of time, but what are they going to do after that? What are they going to do when the bubble is burst? And particularly if the work hasn't gradually built up its audience. And that's what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to build up your audience over a period of time, and you want to bring your prices up very slowly. It's better to underprice to begin with. And then you aren't pricing yourself out of the market, because the thing is if your prices, let me tell you something about pricing structure. A piece under $500, a piece that sells for $480 is going to sell 10 times faster than a piece that sells for $510. You have there's another level where you have trouble at, and that's when you're selling a piece for $1,000. The same thing, a $980 piece is going to sell 10 times faster than a piece that's selling for $1,010, and $1,500, and $2,000, and so forth. But there's something else that happens. When you're under 500, your audience is this big. When you're over 500, it's this big. When you're over 1,000, it's this big. When you're over 2,000, it's this big. When you're over 3,000, it's this big. And then when you're over 5,000, it's this big. So what you want is you want the broadest possible base of potential collectors. This is just a matter of how much money people have and how much money people have to spend. So you want to get a broad base of people. Now I'm in a position now where I have a $3,000 ceiling on my work. The work ranges between, let's say, $1,500 and $3,000. But what I'm doing is I'm making the bronzes. I don't want the prices to go over $3,000 because I have a nice buyer base, and I think I can maintain this buyer base, you know, right through retirement or disablement or whatever's going to happen to me, right? But if I go over $3,000, I so limit my audience that I may, in fact, fill up the pipeline, and that may be it. All right, and then where do I go? I can't back down on my prices. So the idea is that you don't really want to be a superstar. What you want are nice, even sales distributed over a wide geographic area. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other?
what's the percentage? Do you do
Uh,
60, 40, 50?
On the ceramic pieces, I do 50/50. This is standard, and I have no problem with this. Because you know, if you put yourself in the position of the gallery directors, they have a lot of expenses, and they're, you know, the art business is very much subject to the economy, and sometimes they don't sell zip, but they still have to pay the rent. So you have to have, you can't think of it and say, well, I put my heart and soul in this work, and they're taking 50%. They need that 50% to run their operation. And another thing is too, is if you want people to work real hard for you, they gotta get paid. And if you dicker with them about the percentage, right, and you're always being real tight about the percentage, they won't want to work with you. They may not want to deal with you. I treat my gallery owners with kid gloves. I'm so nice to them. I give them everything they want, and they give me everything I want. It works both ways.
So when you say you sell your pieces for from $1,500 to $3,000, that's the retail price?
That's the retail price, and I get 50% of that on the ceramics. On the bronzes, I take 60%. However, in fact, by the time I pay for the cost of the bronze, I'm making less than 50%. But that's offset by the fact that I can also sell that same piece over and over again. Darwin?
When you make a bronze piece, do you discount the ceramic piece then because you've now duplicated it in essence?
No, ceramic piece, no, the ceramic.
The original ceramic piece is the same price.
Original ceramic piece sells like any other piece that would be of the same
You
size.
let them know that indeed there will be bronze dishes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and sometimes that puts a premium on the piece, they really want that piece,
Yeah,
but I don't
that's
raise the price.
Oh, no.
No, but I don't raise the price on the piece itself, it's the same as that.
And you sell the bronze piece?
Pardon?
You sell the bronze piece for the same price as the ceramic?
No, I sell the bronze pieces for a little bit more, but they're still under 3,000. I'm working real hard to keep them under 3,000 so I can maintain that nice customer base.
How much do they cost you, like 1,500?
About 1,000. So if a piece sells for 2,500, and I get 60% of 2,500, still have to take the 1,000 out of my 60%. So I'm not getting $1,250 out of the sale, or whatever.
But like you said, you reproduce it, and then it's like you don't have to really deal. How much work do you do to the bronzes?
The thing is, I send the original, they do the mold, they do waxes. I pick up the waxes, and I have an assistant who cleans the waxes. That means they have to take where the mold comes together, they have to take the stuff off, and if there's little holes, they fill in the holes. And I have an assistant do that, because my hands can't take that kind of.
And then they put all the gates on it, and
Oh, no, my assistant doesn't do, that's all done at the foundry. So.
that's what I said, they do that.
Yeah, so in effect, I don't do anything. After it goes to the foundry, all I do is I pick up the wax, have somebody clean it, and then I take the wax back, and then I pick up the piece, and then it's shipped.
It's all patinaed and everything?
Finished,
Okay.
finished.
So
But,
there's
I
where-
do some of those.
The first one, pretty much, you don't make anything of it from then on, it seems like you
Yeah,
start.
yeah, the first one pays for
Pays
some
for
initial
itself.
costs.
Yeah.
But I do go in and do quality checks. I found that was necessary. I have to make sure the chasing is good. The chasing is when they grind the metal off. So I have to make sure that's
And
good.
then all the polishing and the patinas and stuff, you have to watch, that's part of the quality control.
Yeah, I'll make sure the chasing is done correctly, and then when the patina comes out, then of course that's the end product, and I'll see if that's okay. If it's not okay, I make them do it again.
Yeah.
One other question, sorry. When you're talking to the gallery in the first place, that you've got somebody in business, do you ask them to do a certain amount of advertising, or do you assume they're going to do a certain amount of advertising for you?
Very important point. Your leverage with the gallery is in direct proportion to how much money you can earn for the gallery. So if you're earning a lot of money for this gallery, you can say, oh, what about, let's do some advertising. And what I do is sometimes I go in with them on the advertising, particularly because I have a feel for what their financial situation is. I have a feel for how much they're selling, I know how much they can afford, but I want that advertising to happen, so that I'll go in with them on the advertising on occasion, and sometimes, like the gallery in Carmel pays for all the advertising. You know, and, but sometimes I'll do little extra things for them to help them out. And I'm a little tired now, so I'm forgetting some critical things. Oh, I want to talk to you about the myth of the solo show, and this may be our closing thing. Everybody thinks the solo show is the important thing. Well, there's a problem, there are several problems with solo shows. What happens is you work for the whole year for this one show. I mean, you have really put everything you've got. You put emotionally, physically, financially, everything has gone into this one show. And they send out invitations, they may do a little bit of advertising. And the show flops. And it kills you. And I want to tell you something. It happened to me early on. I don't do this anymore. I don't invest all of my inventory in one show. What I do now is if a gallery asks, actually I have to do one next year, but that's aside from the point. What I do now is I say, I'd much prefer to be in a group show. I'll give you 6 pieces for this show. But that way I can have 4 shows during the year. It's spreading my bet around a little bit. And I'm much more likely to be successful. Also, it means that I can multiply my advertising by 4. And the thing is if you, let's say you have a solo show, how many people are going to see that show? 200? 1,000? 1,000 at the outside. All right? But one advertisement in one good magazine will be seen by 10,000 people. And that one advertisement, in fact, is worth more to you in terms of the advancement of your career than that one solo show. It's not the solo show, it's how much exposure you get. So you're much better off if you work with the gallery and you say, look, you don't have to have this big reception, this big deal. Why don't we go together and do an ad, and I'll give you this number of pieces, and you do this advertisement, and if you want to do the card mailing, that's fine. But in the meantime, your reputation is spread. That's an important piece of information.
How do you make the transition from handling your own work, if that's something like us, to do in the galleries? Like I can see what you're saying about not selling out of your house, but I think I know I and most people kind of start out that way.
Can you repeat that question? I didn't hear you. I mean, make the transition between selling out of your house to selling out of galleries? What you're doing, as soon as you get a gallery in your area, then what you do is you refer all customers to that gallery, because you're not going to start out with 6 galleries, all right? And we can make that as your objective over the next 5 years, is to acquire 6 galleries throughout the country, because you're not limiting yourself to California or the Northern California. So initially you'll have a gallery probably in your area, and you may make that contact personally, all right? Refer everybody to that gallery. In the meantime, you're hustling for a gallery in Santa Fe, and one in Scottsdale, and one in Dallas, God willing. I'm still trying to get a gallery in Dallas. Some towns are tougher than others. I'm still trying for Boca Raton, too. So the thing is over the next 5 years, you'll do that. But once you have that gallery in your local area, you're never going to sell out of your house again.
Okay, how close is my local area?
Well, like I have, like I said, I really cultivate my galleries. And the gallery that I'm in Carmel, I've given him all of Northern California, which means that and I could get into a gallery in San Francisco. I've already been in galleries in San Francisco, but I'm not now. But I could get into a gallery in San Francisco, but that's not what I want. What I want is I want to keep this guy in Carmel because he's a great salesman. You're going to find out which of your galleries. Some of them are really, those guys who are really hot, or gals as the case may be, or really hot salespeople. You want to nurture them. You just give them anything they want. So anyway, so I give him all of Northern California. If another gallery in Northern California comes to me, I say, look, I might be able to do something, but you're going to have to work through that gallery. And then they do the exchange of goods, and that the other gallery in Northern California pays the gallery in Carmel a portion of the commission. Cute. Cute? That's how it works. That's how it works.
How many galleries would make you happy? I mean, if you didn't have bronze, if you only had clay, and you were doing one of a kind.
If I only had clay, I need about a dozen.
A dozen.
I need about a dozen. I have a little more than that now with the bronze, but the clay, see, I have a problem with the clay because I can only make so many dogs a year. And the thing is that I have big expenses, you know, even related to the clay. So the clay can't really support me by itself. So I really have to go into the bronze, and this, for me, it'll eventually mean 20 galleries.
20.
All right? And I mean, I'm running a real operation here. This is a little complicated. Any other questions?
What are your expenses with the clay? The shipping?
I have the shipping expenses are one of the expenses. I work with the galleries on the advertising and on the cards. And I'll tell you something else. When it comes time, if there's going to be like a group exhibition, you want to make sure that your image is on the cover of the invitation. Also ask them to make overstrikes of it. And the thing is if you pitch in on the cost of the invitation, they'll often put your image up front. Pitching in? Depends. The thing is that, I mean, galleries usually do 2,000 at a time. You don't want to pay a huge amount, but you say, look, you know, I'll give you 150 or 200 bucks. I'll give you the color transparency. I want you to put my image on the front of I'll give you this if you'll put my image on the front. All right, of course, this is a little, you know, they'll still.
It's a little further down the line.
This is a little further down the line, right? I don't like to, and this doesn't mean bumping anybody else out. It may be somebody else's images. And then the gallery director may go to each of the, and they do this. They'll go to each of the artists and say, look, can you pitch something in, put something in. They like to put mine on the front anyway because they're good draws for the gallery.
What people do you use for your print?
For printing, I've used different ones. One I used was Modern Age down in Southern California, in Los Angeles. You kind of have to keep after them, but their prices were real good. But you have to watch and you have to proof the stuff going through. This Mercy card was done at Modern Age. I like their prices, but always negotiate. Talk to several printers. You have to negotiate on layout. You have to negotiate on number and on size. What I do is I go in and I say, well, how much for one? And they give me a price. And they say, well, how much for two? And then they lower the price a little bit. Well, how much if I do three? What if I get my friends and we all come in and do together and we have 8? And they give me this low price. I said, okay, but then you got to do the layout. You, the printer, has to do the layout because there's a layout cost when they drop the lettering and stuff in. All right, so you negotiate like that with the printers. Another printer I really like, they're a little more expensive, is Richardson's printers, and they're in Marietta, Ohio, and they have an 800 number. They're more expensive. Their minimum batch may be 2,000, I'm not sure. But they're really businesslike. You don't have, once you send the stuff in, boy, they're like clockwork. They run their operation like I run mine. That's why I like them. Richardson's, apostrophe S. Any more questions here before I fall asleep? Yeah.
In general, what's the price of say that's
2,000, I think you're looking at about $600. That's in color, and that means that you do the basic sketch for the layout and they do the layout.
You don't really understand about how the postcards are printed, you can go together with other people and make the print on a big flat and sound so loud, so we can go and we have 6 or a dozen.
Yeah, you understand that?
No.
The thing is that when they print postcards, when they print these things, they have a huge sheet, all right? And so they got different images all over this sheet. So let's say that 4 of you here decide that each of you wants 2 postcards. Well, that may fill up a sheet. Well, what that does is that improves your negotiating position with the printers. And by the way, the 2 printers I mentioned are not the only printers. There are other printers. So you call around and you really get prices and you really, because of course they're going to charge you as much as they can, right? All right? Did we do it?
So you found these printers all across the country instead of just like in your local area?
Oh, never just work in your local area. I mean, you got 800 numbers, you call them 800 numbers, you negotiate with them. You call this one here, you call that one there.
And then you find these, the printing numbers in the gallery magazines are from,
In different places, other artists have given me the names. I got the name Richardson's from a couple other artists.
oh, I see.
Yeah. Okay, is that it? Good night.
Let's hear how they answer.
Well, it's a complicated question, and I'm certainly glad that you brought it up, Jan. There's so much work already underway, and you, Jan, and Jeannie, and others in the regional collaboratives have done a fine job over this past year in terms of organizing high schools to begin networking activities. Our intent here is certainly not to undo those efforts, but simply to offer an opportunity to all comprehensive high schools in the state to come in on, if they choose to do so, and to be selected into this effort. The applications must be submitted by individual high schools, not by networks. So in the case of your networks, I think each of your schools will have to make their own decision about whether this is something that might be of interest and value to them. If they feel that they're already engaged in as much networking activity as they can take advantage of, then they might feel that this isn't an opportunity that they would want to come into at this time. But we think it is something that offers this additional opportunity to tap into a statewide infrastructure of reforming high schools. And so, in fact, Jan, we urge you and your schools to look seriously at this opportunity at least.
I have to say that I struggled with that issue because of the very reasons you talked about. And one of the things that we've come to think is that if we have a network with, say, 5 or 8 schools in them already, and all 8 apply, but let's say only 1 gets chosen, which I understand can happen, that one school could still be a resource to our existing network. So when you talk about ways to meld the 2 networks, you now have one school in a statewide organization getting some very interesting and different information, and they then can be a resource to our local network that is going on. So we're excited about that opportunity.
I think that would be a very constructive solution to this. And of course, there are many other reform efforts. So one of the other callers mentioned 1274, and we've talked here about the Coalition of Essential Schools and AVID programs and many others, all of which are powerful efforts benefiting high schools. And I think it's to our advantage that we have this much energy coming together on behalf of high schools in the state at this time.
Thank you, Barbara. Looks like we have a call coming in from Whittier. Again, I encourage you, if you have a phone call, questions you would like to ask, please call in. And for now, let's hear from Whittier.
Hi, Jeannie. This is Steve Ball.
Hey, Steve. How you doing?
Good. I had a question about how this project might tie into the ROP, Regional Occupational Programs.
Ooh, another good question. All right. Who wants to take that one?
Sure.
All right, Bill.
The regional occupational programs are a very important component of the services that are provided to high schools. One of the things that we see as focusing on the application process on comprehensive high schools is we would encourage those schools to look at the resources within their community, which may be a ROP on their campus, to be an important part of that leadership team that applies and participates. We would hope it wouldn't be a separate application, or that they would see themselves as anything other than perhaps administratively somewhat separate entities, but serving the same students. So there is not a application for an ROP, but we would expect that ROPs would be important components of the reform efforts at each individual school.
Okay. Well, I know that in our local networks, we've certainly tried to involve ROP people, and I would hope that in a statewide California High Schools Network project, even though there may be not a $4,000 school coming in, that there could be some outreach in that area too. So we're not...
We think that would be a grand mistake if, in fact, there weren't a strong participation of ROPs in this project and other in high school projects in the state. I mean, it's ignoring one of the most important components we have.
You bet. In fact, when I'm around ROP people, I get them taking the good old second to none document and saying, did you see where we are in here? And we're on page such and such, and cutting out the parts, because finally there's a document that's promoting some of the kinds of things that they've been saying all along. And maybe in some cases we have a lot of lessons to learn from our ROP friends. So encourage that. We're coming close to our hour here and want to give the panel members some chances to ask questions also before we list who the regional collaborative members are so that people can contact them. So back to Glenna and Glenn for a minute.
Well, one question concerning the application form here. It says on student outcomes, describe outcome measures you will use to assess your school program. And looking at a school's vision, is it better for a school to have, say, one or more one outcome, several outcomes, a lot of outcomes when they write their plan? What would you suggest?
Well, I would suggest that you decide what are the outcomes, and if you have exactly one, that you write one. If you have several, you write several. Our sense is that the outcome should include the focus on the post-secondary options that kids will have. That is, some kids will probably go on to university, and some kids will go on to a 2-year college. Some kids will go on to the military. Some will go directly to work in the private sector or in the public sector. We're looking at what are all the outcomes that you envision as good outcomes for students, and how is it that you might get there. We don't assume that, in fact, you necessarily have all those as well defined as you expect to have them defined 2 years from now. We don't expect you to have the measurements in place for how is it that you'll know that your programs are working. I mean, this is all evolutionary kind of stuff, and will take a long period of time. We think that to the extent that you write what you believe in, it will come through as powerful commitment on the part of the school. To the extent that you write words that you don't believe in, we hope that the readers will say, why would someone